The Halley School, in its 150 years, has been the foundation for multiple generations of Story County youth's education, providing a place for knowledge, kinship, and bettering oneself. We would like to thank Jim and Max for sharing their experiences and stories from their time in the school and for entrusting us to carry on their memories for future generations. This video is dedicated to them and the countless thousands who experienced these schools firsthand. For over 70 years, the Halley School served as a place of learning and community in the rural farmlands south of Nevada, Iowa. When built in 1874, the small white building stood like a lifeboat in a sea of prairie grass and new farm ground. The landscape of Story County was very different then. The log homes and winding trails of the early pioneers had given way to the first framed buildings and graded dirt roads. The story of the school is one shared with dozens of its sisters across the state of Iowa today. At its peak in 1902, there were over 12,000 one-room schoolhouses in Iowa. Today, the survivors dot the landscape, remodeled into homes, barns, garages, and storage buildings. But even a smaller few have survived to serve as community buildings, museums, and even still places of education. In the late months of 2020, the Nevada Community Historical Society had the honor of interviewing two of the school's alumni. Jim Weeks and Max Witticker shared their memories of the school spanning from the late 1930s till the closing of the school. Here we speak with Jim Weeks about his family and growing up in the school system.
I'm Jim Weeks. My parents were Leroy and Mina Weeks, that lived southeast of town here. And I and 6 siblings went to and graduated from Nevada High School. They ranged, my oldest brother was about 23 years older than me. So we, first 4 were born once a year for 4 years, and then they dropped out a few years and a couple more. But I started to school here, I believe, in 1940, and went until it closed, which I think was 46. For most of the state, that's what it was. And the next year then I went to Nevada High School. First floor was junior high at that time. And had such famous teachers as Miss Evans. She was a legend and taught mainly math to us. I graduated in 1951 and went on to Iowa State University.
Joining Jim that Saturday afternoon was Max Witticker. Max was a fellow graduate of the class of 1951 and had spent several years at the Halley School before transitioning to Nevada High School with the rest of his class.
Well, I think 1939 is about when I started.
39 or 40.
Yeah. And left there and went to Nevada school in the 7th grade.
Bunch of country hicks joining all these townies.
Yeah, I think that get quite an experience.
The Halley School was one of several dozen schools in central Story County. The farm children who attended the Halley School were familiar with 3 other schools in the nearby area and interacted with them multiple times a year.
the schools, most of them were 2 miles apart. Ours, the students in a block, like 1 mile out from the school, most of those kids went to that school. Like, there was a school out here on the corner, Highway 30, and then 2 miles south of that was, I don't know, we called it the middle school or something. It was a little larger than our school. Anyway, they started buses somewhere in that time frame, I think, in possibly 46, 47.
In the wintertime, if the weather was really bad, Dad would take us with horses and wagons to school and then come and get us when school was out. I do remember that. That way you had a wagon to get down in and keep halfway warm. Because it was a little over a mile to school.
The teacher's contract required them to be at school a half hour before the startup and get her fire going.
And then every morning, 2 of us would walk up to the Harold Patterson's and get a bucket of water.
Teachers in one-room schools were often recent graduates and spent a couple years teaching before oftentimes they would resign from teaching after becoming married. In many situations, the teachers would only be a few years older than the older pupils they were teaching. Jim and Max recalled many of the teachers who taught at the Halley School in their time.
Marjorie Carpenter, yeah, she was a favorite. And then there was a Pearson. I think she was from up around Radcliffe. And then there was Applegate. That's the names I remember.
Miss Brown was here 1 year.
Yeah, Miss Brown.
She was the makeup between Carpenter's two.
I was going to say, if you look on my old report cards, I think I've got 6 or 7 of them. Now, who was the 18-year-old teacher?
I don't remember her name. I can't remember. But she built that airplane model that showed us how an airplane works.
Yeah.
And if she heard an airplane, everybody outside, we're going to identify this airplane. Because we had spotter books. I still have mine. Of all the planes of the world that, I don't know, where we ordered them.
And one of the teachers, I think it was Marjorie Carpenter, that always watched you when you left school at night and make sure you walk down the side of the road. She'd stand in the door and watch us walk home. And if we walked in the middle of the road, we heard about it the next morning.
The school playgrounds of the Halley School were much different from the playgrounds of schools today. The large grassy area surrounding the building had a teeter-totter and swing set. Softball games and school games made up most of the recess time, with games ranging from the fun and calm to the more dramatic and potentially dangerous.
Yeah, it's sort of a rough life on the school grounds in those days because we had Everett Whitticker, who was a big boy, as were all Whitticker kids. But he was an extra big boy. And then you had these little kids, and one of their favorite games was crack the whip. And so the end of the whip was the smallest kid on the school grounds because you could whip him real good. Mm-hmm. And quite a few of them ended up with scratches and bruises and stuff. But because you had this big anchor in the middle, mm-hmm. around it go, and until somebody went off the end.
Depending upon the school, students would often have to bring their lunches with them. Usually, they would carry their lunches in a tin lunch pail. As time progressed, some schools would later require teachers or a family member to bring a hot lunch for the class to share. Max remembered how in the later years of the Halley School, some of the mothers would bring in a hot dish for the class to eat.
And then at one time, the neighbor, or the women, the mothers brought a hot dish, usually a casserole, in, I don't know, the last 2 or 3 years. Good old peanut butter. I still remember that. Peanut butter sandwiches, back then peanut butter wasn't what it is today.
Didn't have any nuts in it.
It would stick to the roof of your mouth all day. And sometimes egg sandwiches. Your mother would make an egg sandwich.
Those were popular.
When the Halley School finally closed to students just after the end of World War II, the building was close to 70 years old and had only had electricity for the final 5 years of operation. After closing its doors, the schoolhouse started a journey that would take it across the gravel roads and streams of the county. The school was used as a storage building in its original location before being sold at auction to the Hornbacher family for $310. Isaac Hornbacher originally purchased the school to turn it into a small summer residence in the Bates Woods near East Indian Creek. However, this plan was not to come to fruition. After being used as a farm outbuilding, apple storage space, and finally a storage building on the Hornbacher farm, the school found new purpose when in 1976 the Nevada Bicentennial Heritage and Horizons Committee was gifted the structure by the Hornbacher and Hanson families. The building was then moved over 8 miles and found a new home on the Story County 4-H grounds next to the community building. The committee set about restoring the school to as close as possible of its original appearance. When the school was sold at auction, all its furnishings were sold separately, so the committee set about finding all the fixtures needed. In 1976, the first guests were invited into the newly restored schoolhouse. Several hundred signed the welcome book that day, many of whom were once the children who had sat in the desks in that very building decades before. But this was not the final move for the Halley School. In 2006, the building was moved across Nevada by truck to its new permanent location on the Briggs Terrace Evergreen Lane property. The school was placed on its new foundation, ushering in a new era of stories and memories. In 2024, the Halley School celebrated 150 years of memories. In that time, thousands of children wrote on its chalkboards, and dozens of teachers made lasting impacts on generations of Iowans. This video is dedicated to the memory and the legacy of those children and teachers, like Jim and Max.